Welcome to our video on Pro Tools. Before we get started looking at Pro Tools for music production, we want to take a few minutes to review some recent improvements that have been made to the application. Two areas of the program have benefited from substantial improvements are the Tools and Edit Display area of the Edit window and greatly improved MIDI functionality. With us is Dave LeBolt, Director of Product Strategy at DigiDesign, and he'll be taking us on a quick tour of these new improvements. Dave, I see a lot of changes on the screen here. Tell us about a few of them.
Well, there are a lot of changes. Let's start up over here in this toolbar area.
Okay.
We have substituted a single icon that represented what was called the Smart tool for this little bar. So now this just tells you that those three tools are combined into one. And you'll notice that there are these little triangles that are located on these tools. They stand for little drop-down menus. So over here, the pencil tool has choices like freehand, line, triangle, square, and random. And that's useful for if I'm working with MIDI data. I can easily just draw in shapes in terms of my controller values. If I'm working with pan automation or any kind of plug-in automation, I might use the triangle wave and set a grid value for like a half a second, and I can automatically draw an auto pan that's just a triangle wave over half a second. So that's a really powerful feature. Let's move on to the hand tool, the grabber hand. There's the standard grabber hand, which is labeled time. And then object-based selection is a really powerful feature. That lets you click on one region, any other discontiguous regions, ones that are not next to each other, and just go on selecting, so you can select things that are not in proximity to one another and edit them.
Got it.
And separation allows you to just select over an area in a region and just automatically cut something out with the grabber hand. Over here with the trim tool, in addition to the standard trimmer, which we know and love, we can also scrub and trim at the same time. So if I'm working to picture, that's really handy. I can just go right up to where a sound effect is and stop and say I have trim there. And time compression expansion, invaluable for anything having to do with music or post-production, where you can just right on the timeline say, hey, I want to just make this exactly this long. And if you're using a grid value, that might be minutes and seconds, or time code, or bars and beats, you can say, just expand this right to this point.
I see.
That's really handy. All right, moving on, if we look at the main counter area, now we have two counters in the edit window, and we can set the time base right from here. So I can be looking at, say, minutes and seconds and time code at the same time, or bars and beats and things like that.
I see.
And over here, the grid and nudge pop-ups have been separated into two different entities. So I can set a grid value, say right now I'm working with bars and beats. I can set 1 bar as my value, and it's intelligent. It knows if the time signature's changed or anything. And over here, I can set a nudge value that might say be in minutes and seconds, and say I want to type in a custom value, say like 5 milliseconds, and I can nudge notes around with 5 millisecond nudge value while I'm gridding to bars.
Oh, that's great.
And if I'm working to time code, conversely, I can do anything. I can just nudge by frames, and I can grid to seconds.
Great.
So this is a totally different experience. Below the grid and nudge pop-ups and their entry areas, there is this little gray area, and you'll see that when it comes alive when I go down in the edit window.
Yeah.
It's showing my exact position on the track relative to whatever I'm looking at. If I'm looking at audio, it's going to show me quant values, which are levels, the sample level, against my main time base. If I go to a MIDI track, it's going to tell me the exact MIDI note number that I'm positioned on. And if I'm looking at automation data, volume, pan automation, or any kind of plug-in parameter, it's going to tell me the exact level, like over here it's showing me in dB.
Okay.
All right, moving on to this area. This is absolutely critical because we've always had start, end, and length. But when working with MIDI data, if I move in closely to look at some MIDI, here are some notes blown up. And if I select a note, this shows me the parameters for that note, and I can go in here and edit those parameters using a MIDI keyboard, or change the velocity, etc. Okay, moving on. Go back to this small view. To the left over here, the cursor quadrant's been expanded so that it can show zooming of audio vertically, or zooming of MIDI note data vertically, so I can get more or less MIDI data. Let's take a look at that a little bit more closely here. The notes are skinnier, so I can see more notes at one time, and here they're fatter, so I get more detail about the notes.
Got it.
Okay. These little chiclet buttons, as we call them underneath here, 1 through 5, they store zoom values, and the user can store whatever value they want. Over here, these two buttons are really powerful. They also correspond to menu operations, make it easy. So this is separate edit and play selection. In Pro Tools today, you're used to a paradigm where you can select something on a track, and that's the area that you punch in on, and that's the area that you play. And if you go over to here and click this button, you are selecting a different mode where you can select the area you want to edit versus the area you're going to play. Over to here, this little A to Z button, this is saying where does the keyboard get focused? What are you doing with the keyboard? Normally, if the focus is on the region list, you type something, the region list scrolls. This allows you to have what's called command key focus, and that means that the keyboard, every single key on the keyboard, has a single key edit function, and that's tremendously powerful. It means that you don't have to remember a lot of key commands. You can basically just go in here and say, okay, let's say I place this insertion point here and I say fade to end. So I just press a single keystroke and it does the fades for me. Practically every menu function is available directly with these single key commands.
That's fantastic.
We've covered most of the functions up here. Let's take a look at this ruler area. We're all used to working with a single ruler, but now you can look at as many rulers as you want, different time scales, and there are also rulers for MIDI people or people working in music for markers, tempo, and meter. Let's talk about the markers for a second.
Okay.
Markers are basically just another kind of attribute for memory location, but they add a lot of power to Pro Tools because, for starters, they're visual. You can actually see where they are. They have a little yellow line that extends down the screen. You can drag them around. What's really important about the markers that differentiates them from standard memory locations is that they can be time ordered, so it doesn't make any difference when you drop them. They'll just be sorted in time, and you can make selections, say with your audio and a marker, and move it around so that anything that you're doing in terms of logging a take or a performance will follow. So let's give an example. If you're recording a voiceover or a guitar solo or something like that, and you keep on dropping markers to say, I like this take, I like this spot. When you start cutting up your audio, now the markers will follow along with you, and that really helps you doing your work. There's something else I think I should show you, which is that there's a new scroll option. There are several scroll options, but there's one called a steady head display or continuous playhead. And a lot of people have wanted this. If I press play here, you can see that I'm steadily scrolling along. The waveforms are moving past a center point.
Yes.
So that's different than the paradigm we've had in Pro Tools before. So you can see what's coming up. Let's move back to the standard scrolling. Another thing that's really different in what we're dealing with, we talked about the markers briefly, but in the memory locations window, I can now look at many other attributes. We also have changed some things about the transport. We've added the ability to look at a counters view that lets you see a main and sub counter, and you can change the time scales here the same as the edit window one. And this lets you work in the mix window without having to sort of guess where you are, and you can locate to a specific location and play from that point.
That's great.
Over here, if we say show MIDI controls, you'll notice that basically we've separated these functions out so that somebody who's not music or MIDI centric doesn't have to look at these controls if they need to.
Right.
And we also have a smaller view here so you can see the ones that you really have to get to mostly.
Good.
All right, so there's one other thing I'd like to show everybody, and that is there's a big change to the edit window in terms of how data is displayed. Right now I have an option called show grid lines turned on, and whatever your grid value is, I'm zoomed out pretty far, you get to see your present grid value against the screen. This is really handy when you're trying to position stuff. And secondarily, there's a gray background to tracks and a little more of a 3D look, and it makes it a lot easier on the eyes, especially in dark rooms. So I'd like to tell you some stuff about what we've been doing with MIDI.
Great. Love to hear it.
The MIDI that we've supplied gives you the best of all worlds. We have a piano roll display built in here. You can see here's the basic MIDI note data, and we can zoom in a little closer to that. Let's take a look at what it looks like zoomed in. Here we're looking at a track view. We have track views that get just about as big as you want. So there's the extreme track view. Here's jumbo, whatever you need to work with.
Okay.
And you can zoom the notes in and out. I've shown the little command. I'm just using the keyboard to do this.
Yes.
And you can, of course, zoom this way. So this is pretty much a standard piano roll display. This is what you're used to seeing in a MIDI sequencer, which is basically a continuous view of notes. But we have a different view called regions view, and of course that's just the standard regions that Pro Tools users are used to seeing. So what this allows people to do is work with edit groups with their audio or MIDI tracks, and they can use the regions for block arranging, and they can use the notes view for doing all your editing without having to worry about where's this region start or end. All that housekeeping is taken care of behind your back. And if we hold down the pop-up, you can see all the other options that are down here. Basically, just like any other kind of automation data in Pro Tools, you can view any of the MIDI data in the same way. So let's take a look at how we look at velocity. I'm going to make these notes a little skinnier. Here you can see there's a velocity stalk, and I can grab hold of it and change a value. And once I'm satisfied with that value, I can always see what it is in the upper right-hand corner there, numerically. I can also use the pencil tool to just draw in velocities just like this, just sort of randomly, right? Undo that, and I could use the line tool to do it this way, or I could use the triangle tool. I mean, there's just all kinds of wacky things you can do here.
Wow.
Very flexible way to work. So that's what the velocity thing's about. We have pan and mute. There's actually true MIDI muting because the MIDI engine can mute, so you can have fader moves that you're doing, and we can do touch-sensitive fader moves with Pro Control and actually mute the MIDI data. This is really powerful, especially for dance remixing. Pitch bend view. Here we're looking at some pitch bend. It's going by kind of fast. I'll just play it back at half speed. You can see that's where I did some wacky pitch bends on that drum and bass kind of stuff. And aftertouch, program changes, system exclusive, which can be moved around in blocks, and any controllers. Here are standard controllers. If you want to add any controllers, it's just like working with the plugins window. You can just add in any parameters you're interested in automating. So that gives you an idea of what you get in this menu. And we've also moved some of the data display stuff over to here. And there's also a note chasing mode, so you can choose whether or not you want to chase the notes if you have a sustaining pad or something like that, or whether or not you want to skip that because you're working with drum loops or something like that and you don't want to have it re-trigger.
Right.
Let me give you a little indication of what you can do with these transport controls.
Okay.
These are pretty straightforward MIDI operational controls. This one is wait for note or wait for MIDI event, which allows you to use any MIDI event to start recording.
Okay.
This is your metronome on and off, and we've set up a new paradigm with the numeric keypad called transport mode that lets me control this directly from here, in addition to any common transport functions that anybody would want to use, not just immediate. So we go over to here. I can turn loop recording, for example, on and off, or loop playback, or I could rewind or fast forward. If I hold down the key here, I could go directly into record, So this is great. So over here, this is my count off. Turn that on and off. I double click on that. It brings up my dialog to set the time for my count off.
Okay.
And this is what's called merge recording, which a lot of programs called overdubbing, and that lets you stack notes on top of existing notes. I should say stack any MIDI data on top of existing data. This is the conductor icon. In Pro Tools, we're allowing a manual tempo mode, which lets you just set up an alternate speed that you might want to be working at. That might be because, like, for example, here I've got some stuff that's sort of drum and bassy. And there's some pretty fast moves on this track. Most of this type of programming is actually done at a slower speed. So I can just set up the manual tempo at a slower speed and do my work there.
Okay.
Over here, this is showing your time signature and so on. So enough of all that. I know you guys are thinking like, well, what about recording?
Do something.
Do something. I'm just going to bring back this 8-bar selection over here. I've just got a simple playback loop going on.
Okay.
Got a count off, so I can start playing at the right time, metronome on. And I'll just lay down a groove. And, I'll probably have to quantize it a little bit.
Maybe.
Pretty slobby. All right, I'm going to bring up my quantize window now. All right, that's laid down pretty cleanly. I'll just lay in some hi-hat a little bit. Okay, now right while it's recording, I'm just going to see I can flip around to these windows or do any other kind of operation I want to do. I'm going to go move back into my edit window here. Flip this behind. And I'm going to move down to my bass track over here to record. So there's that bass data that I just laid down there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could just plop this track height up a little bit and get a little more detail of what's going on with the bass. I'm going to turn off the click. All right, and I'll move over here to the pitch bend view. You can see.
Swinging.
All right. I've given you an idea of what it's like to do some basic loop recording.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's take a look at what it might be like to use the pencil tool to draw in some fast drums. I'm going to go over here and choose a 30-second note grid.
Okay.
I've turned grid on from slip mode. See, now we can see the grid showing up.
Yes.
And right while I'm playing around here, I'm just going to choose a spot where I want to go in and just draw in a fast little roll move here. That's the note they'll play. It's coming up to it. Pretty simple, right?
Right.
And then I'm going to use these selection tools while this is going on and say, okay, let's take out these other drums that are happening here. Just delete them so that this kick isn't interfering either. I'm just going to take that out too.
Okay.
And then while it's playing back here, I'll just move over to velocity. You know, everything responds really quickly here. You can see the velocity stalks. We could zoom in on this area, but I don't even think it's necessary. Let's take a look at using the line tool, or maybe freehand might even be better. Let's just use freehand.
Okay.
We'll just draw something here like this. I could also do some really wacky stuff, which is I could be drawing on this grid. Let's make the grid something that's a little bit smaller, say maybe a 16th note. And I'm just going to change all the velocities. With the triangle. There's a lot of really cool creative things you can do with this.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to take I just undid that. I'm going to take this track out of record. And now one of the really nice things I can do to this is I can put this into touch mode. I'm going to use Pro Control for a second, and I can actually just perform mutes on this track, and it responds really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And this is nice, fast mute response, and I could be doing some volume move on the bass as well as this, and see my faders move, and this is not something you really get on other MIDI sequencers, right?
Definitely not.
So if I go back to recording on this track, because I can go right into recording. So everything's just happening in real time there, and I say, okay, maybe I don't like what I've done over here. This is like, I'd like to just scale this down a little bit. This spot. Just scale these moves up this way, take this down a little bit. Everything responds really quickly, and you can do everything in real time. I think another important point to mention is let's remember that when we're looking at all this data on the screen, this is all in one window. And I think the key thing that's different about this than many other programs is that when you work in most sequencing and digital audio programs, you're not able to look at waveforms at the same time as MIDI data all the way down to the sample.
Right.
And we can do that all in one window. You don't have to constantly switch windows back and forth, and you can use the memory locations as a quick navigator to get to whatever you want to look at. So if we went back to this other drums and bass example for right over here, I can just sit here and I don't have to switch windows, and I can zoom right down to the sample level and look at that MIDI data right down to the sample level. And
right.
We have a 960 tick per quarter note resolution, and internally a 960,000 tick per quarter note resolution. We have a really, really accurate MIDI engine.
Wow.
So I think that gives you a pretty good overview of what's going on.
A lot of great new features, Dave. Thanks for the overview. While watching Pro Tools for music production, keep in mind that there have been a lot of new features and improvements to Pro Tools since this video was produced. And while the purpose of the video is to give you an idea of just how powerful the system is, we really recommend that you contact your local DigiDesign dealer to arrange your own personal demo. So, enjoy the video. Hi there, I'm Russell Bond.
And I'm Ken Walden.
And in this video today, we're going to show you how easy it is to record, edit, mix, and master a tune using Pro Tools. Now, if you're used to working with tape, you may be wondering how this way of working is different and why more and more audio professionals are using Pro Tools these days. And I could sit here for an hour and give you the usual lecture, but I think we'd rather just show you by producing a real tune by a real band with a real Pro Tools setup. We're about to take you through a whole session from recording the basic tracks to writing the CD master. So let's get started. We've got the band here in the studio with us today, and while they're getting ready, let's show you how we get audio into your Pro Tools system. Now, for demonstration purposes, we're going to use this microphone preamp and a couple of audio interfaces to show you how easy it is to connect the hardware of your Pro Tools system to your existing studio environment. And what we have here is a microphone plugged into our preamp. Now, as you know, the preamp takes the low voltage signal that's generated by your microphone and amplifies it to line level. We simply take the output of the preamp and connect it directly into the input of the audio interface. Now, we're showing you an outboard microphone preamp here as an example, but you could just as easily use the preamps in a little mixer or even a full-size console like the one in front of me. It's that simple. Microphone to preamp to audio interface. Now, monitoring audio back from Pro Tools is just as easy. You route all of the audio tracks in your session to the 1 and 2 outputs of your audio interface. Then connect the 1 and 2 outputs of your interface directly to your mixer or powered monitors. Your 1 and 2 outputs in this case represent the master left and right outputs of your mix. Something else to keep in mind is that you have several audio interfaces to choose from. The 88824, which we're using today, is our professional 8-channel 24-bit interface. The 88220 is our entry-level 20-bit interface. And if you work with ADATs, the ADAT Bridge I/O allows you to digitally transfer audio between Pro Tools and your ADATs. Now that you've seen how we get the audio signal into and out of Pro Tools, we're going to get this rack out of the way and have Ken show us how we set up a new session in the software. Now, once you have your hardware set up, the rest of the magic happens within the computer. Let's have Ken give us a closer look at the Pro Tools software.
Okay, Russ, what I've done, I've already launched the Pro Tools software, and I created a new session, and I named it the name of the song.
Shake It.
Shake It.
Yeah.
You'll see that when we start out with Pro Tools in a new session, we have basically a blank window, and we could create tracks from here. We'll create 10 new tracks, let's say, for starters.
Okay.
So there's our 10 tracks, and we work with these two main windows in Pro Tools well over 90% of the time. This is the mix window, because it looks like a mixing console. We have faders, pans, solos, mutes. And we also have an edit window. Now this window actually will make a lot more sense once we get into recording and editing, so we'll come back to this a little later.
Okay.
So here in our mix window, we can do a number of cool things. We can label our tracks. We'll call this kick, because we're going to record kick into this track. And we can select our input. Now I'm going to select input 1 here because I know I took the kick drum microphone, went into a preamp, and I went into input 1 on our first interface here.
Okay.
For this session, we're using 2 interfaces. This is one set of 8 inputs, and this is our second set. So this is input 1 through 8, and this is input 9 through 16.
So this kick track, input number 1, correlates to number 1 input on this first interface here.
Exactly, and I'll
Okay.
show you how I can also simplify this. We can use a window called I/O labels, where you can label all your inputs and outputs, your buses, etc. So I can go here and say, okay, input 1 is where the kick comes in.
Okay.
Hit OK, and you see that the name comes up, input 1.
Oh, that
kick.
makes really clear to track where different microphones are coming into the system. That's great.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and when you get a big session going, this really simplifies the process. So we have kick here, it's all labeled. You notice we don't have to stick gooey tape all over our system as well, which is nice. That's why it's called a tapeless system.
Now, would you have to do this with every session?
No, you don't actually. You could create a template session. So every time we open up for a new song, we can have all of our tracks labeled, all of our inputs selected. You could even have like EQs inserted, all sorts of stuff ready to go for you.
So if you do a number of similar kinds of sessions, you can save that away as a template and call that up and it's all ready to go.
Exactly, and you can have a number of different templates as well.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, it's really easy to work with.
Great. Ken is going to finish labeling the rest of the audio tracks, and now that we have our audio signal routed into the computer, we should be ready to start recording. Okay, well, the band is in the studio and they're rehearsing the tune right now. We've labeled and routed our inputs, and now we're going to get our monitor mixes set up so we can actually start recording. Ken, show us how you've got this Pro Tools session set up so far.
Sure. What we're looking at here, these red faders, basically are our control room mix. So as I adjust these, we're adjusting what I'm hearing out here.
Right.
And up here, we have the ability to do 5 mono or stereo sends. So this is real powerful for headphone mixes, because what I could do is have one for the drummer, and we have these small faders as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and we have a separate headphone mix. I'll show you this right here. Now this is a stereo headphone mix that we're using to go out to the guitarist, the bass player, and the keyboardist, I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so this is really nice, and we can also copy our main mix here up to this auxiliary send.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's really easy to make an exact duplicate of your stereo mix up here for a headphone mix and then make changes here.
Really fast to set up your auxiliary mixes.
Oh
there.
yeah, really fast, really easy. So let's see, I think we're ready to start recording.
Okay.
Let's go over to the edit window and, hey guys, I think we're ready to record. So we're back at the top here. I'll put up our transport bar. All right, here we go. We're ready to record. So the guys will hear a click, and here they go. Okay, now what's really cool about recording with Pro Tools, it's like having a multi-track tape deck that you could see. So you can see here the waveforms are being drawn basically as they're playing. There's the kick track right there. You can see the snare beats.
Boy, it really helps to be able to see the music as well as hear it. Huh?
Oh yeah, this makes it really easy to locate as well. So we can also make memory locators as we're recording. Let's say there's verse 1. Or let's say there's a mistake I hear. I can also make a locator and say, oops.
All on the fly, huh?
Yeah, all on the fly. We can create up to 200 locators. And just having waveforms makes it really easy to get around. So let's zoom back out. All right, so let's, well, I don't know. Let's check out the rest of the tape.
Yeah.
Eh? Cool, I think
That
we
was a
got
good take, yeah.
All right, guys, I think we got the take. Thanks. You're all free to go except Tommy. Can you stick around? We're going to try doing a drum punch-in.
In a moment, we're going to punch into the drum tracks, something you wouldn't normally attempt to do with an analog tape-based system. But first, Ken, why don't you show us a little bit more about the edit window so we can understand the process a little bit better?
Sure. What we're looking at here is the edit window in Pro Tools. Basically, this is the same as having all your tracks stretched out from left to right, and you can see the waveforms on each of the tracks. So it's really easy to locate, really easy to get around. For instance, if I want to go to the top of the tune, I could see this is where the drum waveform starts. I could just click there, hit play. There's the top of the tune.
The top.
If I want to go to the end, I could just click at the end. Hey, kind of sounds like the top.
Doesn't get faster than that.
Yeah, I get to the middle really fast, any point, and then back to the top. So, instant access locating, or nonlinear locating as well.
Right.
Really easy to use. You can see the waveforms. Also, you can blow up individual waveforms. So, for instance, let's say we were going to edit on this guitar line. We could blow this all the way up to a jumbo size and zoom in on the waveform all the way down to the sample level if we want. Like right there is actually the sample, the waveform there. So we can quickly get back out, get back to the top of the tune. And what we're going to do here, we're going to be doing a drum punch-in.
Right.
And basically the way you do this, you can set up your window so we can see what we're going to do. We'll just zoom in here on this part that we're going to punch in. And we can also see what measure, like what bar and beat we're going to be punching at. Up here we have what's called the timeline. And you see that there's bar beat markers like measure 11, measure 12 here. Now these match up with what we're hearing in the Pro Tools environment. And the way we did that, we used our MIDI metronome as we were recording these tracks, which sends out a click to any MIDI device. Today we have a sample cell card installed in the computer, DigiDesign's RAM-based sample playback card. That drives our click track. The sample cell click will be fed through the headphones via the headphone mix out to the players. So I think we're ready to do this drum punch-in. Let me put up our transport window here. We're going to do 2 measures of pre-roll there. And we've got our punch in ready. And what I'm going to do is punch right now. So basically you'll see 2 measures of pre-roll. And it'll go up to our insertion point and...
Going to record right there.
Oops.
Oh,
Yeah, but I forgot to tell
no drums.
Yeah, I forgot to tell the drummer that we were recording. Oh well, not a big deal in Pro Tools.
You're fired.
Yeah, really. Good thing about Pro Tools is that you have a feature called cancel record, and what we could do is just hit command period, and it's like that punch-in never happened.
Wow.
So that's really cool because you can try to do better punch-ins on any part, any little microscopic part. You could try and get better and better.
And you never erase your original drum.
Right, we never erase that. It's recording files into a new location on the hard drive. So now I think I'll talk with our drummer. Hey Tommy, sorry, I forgot to cue you on that one. You ready to go? Okay, that fill that we talked about, okay? 2 measures of pre-roll, here we go. So now he knows to play. So we're going to roll up to that point. Yeah, I think we got it. That's good, man. So we've got our take here, and what we can do now, we have our punch in right here. We're going to take this tool called the trim tool, and we're going to resize where the punch in happened. So I'm going to basically go right before probably this kick beat right here. In fact, we could even zoom in on this, get a better look at what we're doing. So our punch in will happen right before that beat, and our punch out, let's have it happen right at that kick beat. And let's go ahead and take a listen to this. Pretty seamless.
Wow, you could never edit that accurately on an analog tape-based system.
Exactly, and if we don't like these edit points, we could go in and try new ones. That was a little bit off right there. I could even tighten that up a little bit. So it's really easy to do with a nonlinear system. Another thing we could do, let's say we do this punch in and we go, well, you know, I really like the previous take. We could just delete that, use a feature called heel separation, and we're back to our old drum fill.
That's the original track that he played.
Yeah, check it out.
Right.
Really easy to do. Now when we do those punch-ins, if we want, we could put little crossfades on there just to smooth those transitions to make it even better.
Oh.
But we don't have to, and once again, it's non-destructive, so we're free to try things out.
Wow, it really lets you do things that you wouldn't ever attempt to do in an analog world.
Right. Let's go over and do some vocal recording, then I'll show you how that works as
Great.
well.
Well, we have Nikita in the booth, and we're going to record some vocals now. We're going to look at some aspects of Pro Tools that allow us to do some amazing things with vocal performances. Ken, what are you going to show us first?
First thing I'm going to show you is that we have a track here ready to record, and I have her track blown up to the jumbo size, so when we're recording, I can really see the waveform. This helps to locate. I'll show you as we go through recording. Ready to go?
Ready.
Here we go.
Saturday night, don't wanna be here alone. Who should I call, or should I take my chances alone? There's no doubt about it, I'm gonna let my head down and shake it, shake it. It's Saturday night. Saturday night, yeah.
Cool, thanks. That was a great take.
Thanks.
So we've got our take here, and once again, we've got a waveform. So for instance, she did 3 little improv bits at the top.
Right.
I could see those. Here's the first one, here's the second one, here's the third one. And I could even play, like if I want to hear the second improv bit, I could just grab that, hit play.
Right.
Really easy to get to. Now we have the 3 lines that she sang here as well. So if I want to get to, let's say, her third line, here's the first line, here's the second line, here's the third line. Really easy to locate. We could even zoom in, drop the cursor here, and play. Here's line number 3, right?
Should I call, or should I take my chances?
Now I can also turn this into a region. We have these regions of audio that we've recorded here. What I'll do is grab this, and we'll name this Who Should et cetera, right?
Right.
So why don't we go ahead and do a punch-in on this? I'll show you how easy that is. Once again, we can just drop the cursor wherever we want. We're ready to do a punch-in right where she stopped singing, and we can see the gap right there. How about if we take that third line right there?
Okay.
Great, here we go. 2 measures of pre-roll.
Okay.
Pre-roll's on right now, and let's hit record.
Don't wanna be here alone. Who should I call or should I take my chances alone?
So it's really easy to find punch in and punch out. Thanks, that was great. So let's go ahead and let's say we wanted to keep like half of that take and half of the last take.
Right.
Once again, when we're recording, we're not destroying the previous take. So what we can do is resize this region right back to any point. So let's say I just wanted to keep the first couple parts of the first take and then use the rest of the second take. Really easy to do, right? Just resize that region and we have part of each take. Take pre-roll off and listen to it.
Who should I call or should I take my chances alone?
Now since it's visual, right, we can get right in there and do our edits, and I just cut that edit and basically hit play and it's good to go. Also, non-destructive. We want to get rid of that, we can delete it and use heel separation, and we're back right to where
back
we
to
started.
The original, right.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and do some loop recording. Now when we recorded the chorus, if I remember correctly, it started right here. Let's go ahead and check that.
Oh, shake it,
Yeah, right there at measure 28.
Saturday night, yeah.
So what I can do, I could even punch this in. I can say, let's go to measure 28. We're going to punch in right there, and we're going to do a 4-measure loop record. Now what loop record's going to do is basically record over this section again and again, automatically, and keep all these takes, so we can just try different takes and choose from which one we like after the fact.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and set up 2 measures of pre-roll. Ready to grab this chorus?
All right.
Here we go. And let's take it.
Saturday night. Oh, shake it, shake it. It's Saturday night, yeah. Ooh, shake it, shake it. Saturday night. Oh, yeah. Shake it, shake it. It's Saturday night.
Great, that was awesome, thanks.
All right.
Okay, so we've got 3 takes there. Now we can just choose our 3 takes. We can go back to the take 1 of that pass, and we can go back to take 2. And we can listen to these as well. Oh, we got pre-roll on, let's turn that off.
Ooh, shake it, shake it.
That was that take. Let's go ahead and listen to the first take she did.
Oh, shake it, shake it.
So after the fact, we could choose from the takes that we want. Really easy to do, really
Just
fast.
as easy as that little pop-up menu right there on the
Yeah,
screen.
you just hold the control key and go to the pop-up.
That is so fast.
The nice thing about Pro Tools also, I find, as a recording artist, is that you can just drop the cursor, record, and it keeps you in the creative mindset.
Right.
You don't have to basically step out into the technical mindset and think about where your points are. You have pre-roll, you drop the cursor, and you record. You don't like it, you cancel, you're back out. If you want to go over a section, you loop record. Really easy to use.
That is so flexible.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, thanks to all this great technology, and not to mention a pretty incredible singer, we've got some vocal tracks we're happy with. So now, let's check out some of Pro Tools' editing capabilities. There have been a lot of analogies made between Pro Tools and mixer tape combinations when talking about recording, processing, and mixing. Editing in Pro Tools, however, is unique in that it really allows you to improve the performance. Not just help you capture the artist's best performance, but actually build the best performance from the artist's best takes. Ken, let's take a look at some of the editing features within Pro Tools.
Okay, Russ, let me show you how this works.
Okay.
What we're going to do first is take some of this headphone bleed that we had on the lead vocal out. Now, when Nikita was recording her vocals, she had her headphone a little bit off, so we got a little extra bleed.
Is that what that is right there?
Yeah, let's listen to that.
Ah, right.
Oh,
Now, to get rid of it in Pro Tools, it's really easy. You just grab your trim tool and trim this region boundary right up to where the vocal starts. And you could see the waveform, nice and big here in
Sure.
this jumbo waveform view. So now listen to that. Nice and quiet.
Instant noise gate.
oh,
Exactly.
Right.
And it's sample accurate, and you can do it visually. So if I want to get tighter with this, what I could do is just zoom in on the waveform, and I can see right where she starts this vocal performance, and we can just go right up to where she actually starts singing. Right now, if we look, instead of at bars and beats, we can look at minutes and seconds. we've got 4 milliseconds.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a really tight edit. And once again, this is non-destructive. So if we want that noise there for some strange reason, we can get it back. Now check this out. We can also edit on the fly. We have some breaths in her vocal performance here that I'm going to take out while she's singing. So listen to this.
There's
Yeah,
no
breath right
doubt
there.
about
Yeah, that little click.
it.
And one right
I'm
there.
gonna let my hair down.
Now if we play through, dead quiet.
There's no doubt about it.
Right.
I'm go-
And if we want to get those back for some strange reason, we can. Now, if you do this on toms on a drum set, it's amazing how much the sound of the song opens up because
Sure.
all these noise floors are gone. So all you're hearing is instruments that are actually playing.
Exactly.
Very powerful tool, even though it's conceptually really simple. And doing this on any kind of console take hours to get this kind of editing.
Oh, you couldn't automate as accurately as that.
Take forever to do, yeah. So another thing I want to show you, we've got this guitar line, and he's playing this riff at the top of the tune with the rest of the band. Let's check it out.
The hook of the song.
Right. So now a tricky thing that he's got going on here, he's got these 2 little pickup notes, right? He goes chicka down, 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 down. Now usually with a lot of sequencers that are out there and a lot of other applications, it's really difficult to do this because he starts playing his part. Let's go back to bar and beats here in the timeline at measure 3, and we could see that against the timeline. And normally we'd have to think with other applications, oh, I need to get that pickup note, so I need to copy from what is it, bar 2, beat 4, tick 240 or something like that.
Right, you have to figure out exactly where those pickup notes started.
A lot of thought process. With Pro Tools, we could simply go into grid mode, which will allow us to grab in a musical value. We're going to grab to quarter notes. Now everyone played along with the Pro Tools MIDI metronome, so our grid here will match what we're going to grab.
Okay.
So we can just quickly grab that.
Right on the downbeat there.
Yeah, and I'm using visual reference to grab what I need. We can go to the end of the song, which is at measure 43, paste that in there. Now if I want that pickup note, I could simply resize this region to include that pickup note.
I see.
It's all visual.
So you edit right to the downbeat, then you can region out any of the pickup pieces you need or any other parts of the audio that you'd need there.
Exactly, and since I was using grid when I did the original copy and paste, it locks up with the song. Check it out.
Great. Locked right up.
Right. Now you can do this with one track or you can do this with several tracks. We have this horn part, does the same riff at the top of the song. Let's go ahead and listen to that.
Okay.
Go into grid mode, grab from measure 3. We could see the parts we need, copy, go to measure 43 quickly, paste, boom, it's there. Now let's listen.
Oh, we got a little thing at the end there.
Don't want the horn part,
Okay.
so we could quickly go in and resize out the little last horn blast.
And all with one move, you can do all those tracks together because they're grouped.
Right, exactly.
Great.
So let's listen to that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, really easy to do. So now another thing I want to show you, a feature called playlisting.
Okay.
Now playlisting is basically like having several tracks in one. We could create a new track within a track and do different takes. Now this will make more sense once I demonstrate it. We have a sax solo here which is kind of legato-ish, so let's go ahead and listen to that. We've got that one. Now what I did when I recorded him, I said, let's try a few different takes. The producer might want something different. So we did this SNL one. And we've got this last one, which is kind of crazy.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really different.
So now, to show you more how playlisting works, what we could do is create a new playlist, and I'll call this master, because I'm going to cut some pieces together from those other takes.
Okay.
And now we've got a blank track. We could either record new stuff here, or what I'm going to do is take, let me see, I like the first half of this one, right up to here. Now once again, having the waveform there makes it really easy to find what we want to cut and copy and paste. Go here, paste it. Now we can go to that second half of the crazy one. Copy, master, paste, and check it out. Really easy to do.
Wow, that gives you a lot of room for experimentation with different takes and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even though we have well over 24 tracks going on this particular session, within this one track, we currently have 4 tracks, and we could even make more playlists. You know,
Now, Ken, what happens if one of those pieces gets moved out of sync with the rest of the song?
that's a good question. Let's say you accidentally move a piece of audio out of sync, like this, which sounds like this. It's jazz, man.
So now how would you get that back if you wanted to get it right back where it originally was?
We have a mode called Spot, and every time one of these takes was recorded, it gets time-stamped. So we
Okay.
could basically go here, have Pro Tools remember where it was originally recorded, or recall the timestamp, and then boom, it's back in sync. Check it out.
So that timestamp stays with the audio no matter where it goes. It's always there.
It's always there.
Right.
It's always there. So we've been working with single tracks and groups of tracks, but you can also work across the entire tune. Every time you create a new session, it gives you this all group down here, which allows you to select across all the tracks.
Okay.
So let's say I want to change the arrangement of the tune. What I could do is punch in values. Let's say at measure 13, I want to take 8 measures and delete it. Now
Wow.
you see, it's basically going to cut a piece of tape out and put in blank tape at this point.
I see.
We could write a new bridge or write a new part and try something else out there. Or if we don't like that idea, what we can do is cut 8 measures out of the song. Now, once again, I have 8 measures selected at a very specific location. We can go into shuffle mode, hit delete. Now, this is the same as cutting your tape, taking that piece out and taping these pieces together.
Splicing the pieces together.
Exactly. The song is 8 measures shorter right now.
I see.
So if you need a radio edit or something like that, you could do that.
Boy, you could never edit across that many tracks that fast with analog tape.
We're well over 24 tracks right now.
Yeah.
So let's say we want to try several different edits as well. What I could do is go here to save session, and we'll save a new version. This is version 2. Now we could go and make several different edits and create a whole new arrangement of the song. We can do several different arrangements of the song depending on what we want.
And get back to your original or any version you want instantly.
Close this, open up the old version.
Wow.
Yeah, this is all this editing is basically why DAWs and Pro Tools in particular are revolutionizing the way people record and edit music.
I can see why.
Yeah.
Most people may think of a digital audio workstation as a tool for just recording and editing, but Pro Tools is probably the most powerful mixing environment out there. Ken, let's go over some of the mixing features within Pro Tools.
Sure. First, let's review the mixer. We've got volume faders, we have pan control, solos, mutes. We can also create fader groups. So for instance, I could highlight the different elements of the drum kit here.
Okay.
We can go to our grouping dialog. We can name this group drums. We have 26 different locations to store groups, so 26 different groups essentially.
Okay.
Now you see once these tracks are grouped that all the volume controls move together relative to each other. So if I had a blend for this kit, it'll be maintained as I move the overall level up and down.
Trim them all out as one thing.
Exactly.
Now, can you have groups within groups?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Nested groups, you can have that. You can solo as a group or mute as a group. And if we want to tweak one fader, what we can do is just hold down Control on the keyboard, which breaks off our grouping capabilities. So we can move one fader,
Independently.
solo or mute one fader as well. And then when we let go of Control, they're a group again.
Wow.
Yeah. We have an auxiliary send section here. Now this is different than most analog consoles in that from any of the 5 send points, we can go mono or stereo down to any of our outputs on our hardware interfaces. So we can use external.
Those are physical outputs out of the interfaces.
Right,
Okay.
for using external effects processors. Or we can use our internal mix buses as well. And once again, as I showed with the I/O labels, we can label all these sends and all these routing paths. So we
For
have
clarification.
Yeah, exactly. When I go to send something down my short verb bus, I don't have to remember, oh, bus 2 is where the short verb is. I can just say,
Go to short verb.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Really easy to use.
Fantastic.
So once we use one, we get a little control there, pre or post fader as well, just like you'd have on a large console.
So there are 5 mono and or stereo sends per channel strip, essentially.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, we also have an insert section up here. From the insert section, we can insert hardware inserts, like if you want to insert a compressor or an EQ, maybe you have a favorite EQ or compressor that you bought some time ago, or you could use the internal processing, which we'll get into shortly here.
Right.
So yeah, it's an incredibly powerful mix environment. We also can create auxiliary inputs, mono or stereo, master faders, and even some cool MIDI capabilities. So it's a really powerful mixing environment. Basically anything you want to do here mixing-wise, you can. This rivals the best of the best out there.
Thanks, Ken. Now we're going to talk about signal processing. With Pro Tools, you can use your existing reverbs and compressors like you would with any mixer, but you can also use the internal processing capabilities built into Pro Tools. Now, this system uses software plugins that do the same job that your external reverb, EQ, or compressor might do, but it does it all within the Pro Tools environment. Now, plugins come in two flavors, Audio Suite and TDM. TDM plugins allow you to process your audio in real time, and all of the parameters are automatable, and they're incredibly cost-effective and easy to use. But there are also Audio Suite plugins, which, although work a little differently, they give you the same audio quality as their TDM counterpart, but don't do their processing in real time. Let's have Ken show us how this works.
Okay, the first thing we're going to do here is put an EQ on the kick drum. Now we have 5 insert points per track. So I can go here and, as I said earlier, insert using the audio interfaces, and we can go to external processing equipment. Or we can use the TDM plugins.
Okay.
For instance, I'll use one of the Digidesigned 4-band EQs on this kick drum. You simply insert it and boom, it's patched and there. So now we can start to make adjustments on the sound, and this works just like a console EQ, but generally a lot cleaner because it's all in the digital domain.
So that's already inserted in the chain there on the kick drum track?
Yeah, that's ready to go. When I make adjustments here, it'll adjust the sound of the kick in real time, so we could be playing and doing this as we adjust this. Now we have a whole slew of different plugins. When I grab the pop-up menu here and went to plugin, you can see we have a lot of different stuff in this system. For instance, we have these 4-band Digi EQs. There's also a 1-band version, just in case you just need a little filtering on a track. Here's a really cool one by Drummer. It's an imitation of the DS201, and it's a gate compressor limiter.
Okay.
And there's also the Focusrite D3.
Now, Ken, how do you get Pro Tools to recognize these plugins?
The way you get these into your system, instead of going to the store and buying a hardware box, right, you go and you buy software. And the nice thing about this is, one, software is a lot lighter, and also is a lot faster to install. You plug these discs or CD-ROMs into your computer, and usually in under 2 or 3 minutes, you have these plugins installed. The next time you launch Pro Tools, you'll see any given plugin in your pop-up menu here.
So when Pro Tools launches, it looks for all of the appropriate plugins and calls them up into that menu there.
Exactly. Now, if you look throughout our mix, you'll notice there's not one of these D3 Focusrite compressors. There's another one here, and we have a few others downstream.
Okay.
So when you buy the software, another nice thing is that you don't have to wire it, you don't have to bring it up to a patch bay, and you get more than one as well, as much as your DSP allows you to build. Let's go through a couple of the other ones we have here. Here's a TC Electronics reverb. This is modeled after the M5000 reverb. Now, this is a nice reverb for bringing up another important point. All the parameters for the given effects are in one window here. So instead of having to move yourself out of your mix position to a hardware box that took you forever to wire and forever to mount, and you'd probably have to buy a rack as well to bring that up to. And normally, on effects processors, you have this little window and 2 knobs and some buttons. Well, in our plugins, what you have here is all the parameters in one window. Here's your mix control, your input, your output controls. You can choose different room shapes. You can adjust your high-pass filter, etc. Here's a Digidesigned reverb. Once again, all the parameters in one window. This is a really great one. This is a Lexicon Lexiverb. Now, this has a really nice display where you can see the decay times of the different frequency. So if you know what these parameters do, you can quickly go in here and make adjustments and visually see what's happening to the sound.
Sure, right.
Now, here's another really cool thing about our plugins. They all have the same type of librarian. So let's say I wanted to find another patch to try. What I could do is go here to my little pop-up menu and select, let's say, a vocal gate. You see it instantly changes. Or I can go to some of my chambers. Here's a vocal hall.
So these are the presets for the plugin.
Right. And here's the reverb for this song, Shake It Verb.
So you've saved that as a preset, essentially.
And it's really easy to do. Let's say we like this reverb, but we try one that's a little bit longer and we think, well, I might want to get back to that old one. I can just go Save Setting As, and we'll call this Shake It Verb number 2. And now I can quickly recall either setting.
Oh, wow.
Really easy to do. All of the plugins have the exact same type of librarian. The TC does, this is the Digidesigned Dverb. Here's a Focusrite EQ, same librarian.
So there's a nice consistency to how each one of these works.
Right. Normally when you buy different processors, you have to figure out
You
how
have to learn it.
they all work. Another nice thing is when I'm using these plugins, I'm never leaving the mix position,
Right.
which is nice. You're sitting right in between your speakers. You're in one place
That's
the whole
true.
time, and it doesn't take up extra real estate in your room.
That's a good point.
Right. So they're very cost effective, as you indicated earlier, because you don't just get one when you buy it. So I wanted to show you a special one that we have here today, though, because normally people think of plugins and they think of just standard stuff like reverbs and EQs. This one is an amplifier simulator made by Line 6. It's called Amp Farm. Now, Amp Farm is really cool because in one plugin you get 8 different guitar heads
Okay.
and also 7 different cabinets with different mic angles.
Wow.
So what this does, when we recorded the guitar, what we did was we took the line out of his guitar into a direct box to the preamp to get it up to line level, and then we recorded it onto the hard drive, and we listened to it through Amp Farm. But actually what was recorded onto the hard drive was a dry guitar.
Okay.
Listen to this. I'll solo this track and bypass the effect.
Yeah, just a direct guitar.
Right, kind of plinky sounding guitar.
Right.
Here's Amp Farm.
Wow.
Yeah, sounds
That's
like an
amazing.
amplifier. Yeah, it's a great sounding plugin. Plus, after the fact, if we're mixing the tune and we think this sounds a little too aggressive, we could switch to another head. Let's go to the AC30, maybe turn up the drive a little bit, listen to that. Right, now these are all real-time adjustable parameters here, so we can turn that down.
I see. Just like the real thing.
Same librarian as well. We've got some other settings here. Here's a Fender Bassman emulation. Or we can get back to our original tone.
I see. That's so flexible.
Yeah, it's really easy to use.
A guitar player's dream.
Yeah. These plugins, the whole TDM environment, is just part of the reason why Pro Tools is becoming such a powerful way to make music.
I can see why. Well, now that we've seen how powerful the processing environment is in Pro Tools, let's take a look at how easily we can automate virtually every function we've seen demonstrated so far. Ken, let's show them how easy it is to automate in Pro Tools.
Sure. The first thing I'm going to do to just show some basic automation stuff is automate this guitar track right here.
Okay.
So I'll solo it. We'll go into one of our automation modes, and I'll hit play and make some moves. Watch. Basic volume moves, panning, and some mutes.
Okay.
Now, hands off the keyboard, play that back, and watch the system work. There's our pans,
Couple of mutes.
and there's the mutes. Okay, now in Pro Tools, we take that a step further because you can go over into the Edit window, and not only can you edit and make moves from the mix window, but you can do it from here as well. So we'll go into our volume graph, and now we can see these volume moves superimposed
I
on top of the
see.
waveform.
It's a graphic representation of your automation moves.
Right, when the line goes down, the volume goes down. When the line goes up, volume goes up. Really easy to work with and really easy to see and edit moves from here. In fact, most of the time I do my automation from this window now.
Now, what are the little dots I see on the line there?
Those are called automation breakpoints. I'll show you how these work. Let's get rid of these moves, and let's say we just wanted to do a fade up on this first part.
Okay.
What we could do is make one of these automation breakpoints here, which is like a hinge, and then we'll just have a simple little fade up there. Let's go ahead and listen to this.
Oh, wow, that is so easy.
Really easy because you could see the timeline and you could see the waveform. So let's get rid of these moves here, and let's look at pans. Now here, when I took the pan control to the left, the line goes up to the top. You can see the L there, and when it goes down, it goes to the right, and you can see the R there, left, right. Now let's say during the intro, we wanted to do something a little 60s-esque. What we can do is simply pan from left to right by drawing a line, going from left to right. Let's go ahead and play through that.
Very psychedelic.
Yeah, very cool. So now we can go over to our mutes. Now everywhere the line goes to the bottom is where the track gets muted. When the line's up top, it's not muted. So let's say I wanted to just mute that one little guitar click right there. What I could do is highlight it. You see it says not muted and muted. So now when our cursor hits this section, track's going to mute.
I see now you can edit those points around as well.
Absolutely. If I don't like any of these mutes, voila, they're gone. So another really nice thing about the automation in Pro Tools, very accurate. For instance, in our volume graph here, whenever we're writing moves, this automation information is being updated every 5 to 7 samples. That's about 5 to 6 times more accurate than any hardware system out there. So really accurate as well, because it's all reading this information off the hard drive simultaneously.
Got it.
Now, not only can you automate parameters like volumes and pans, but you can also automate all the parameters in your plugins. So let's go ahead and put up this Lexicon reverb that we were using on the drums.
Okay.
And I'll go over here and show you what I did. I basically set it up so the overall decay time of this reverb is automatable now. It's an automatable parameter. That's why it's green. And what will happen, you can see that our decay times increase at certain parts, right?
Okay.
When the line goes up, that's our decay time. So here, I'll play through this and you can see what happens whenever the line goes up and down.
I see. So in this case, the graphic representation in the plugin is following the parameter that you've written in the automation window.
Exactly, and once again, I could come here and edit this in this window as well.
Oh, wow.
So it's really easy to use this stuff. You have waveforms, you have a timeline, you could get in there and do all sorts of crazy
And you're saying
moves.
that every parameter of every plugin is automatable.
Yep, that's why you have this automation button in all your plugins.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really easy to use and really powerful automation.
So as we've seen, with the ease of the console-style automation and the accuracy of the graphic automation, there's no doubt this is the most powerful automation system available at any price. Well, now that we've finally finished our tune, let's burn a CD of the final mix. Now, you might think that making a CD can be a very complicated and technical process, but it isn't. We're going to show you how to put the final mastering touches on your project and then actually write a CD. Ken, let's see how that's done.
Sure.
Now, I see you have several mixes going on here. Explain that.
Exactly. What we have going on, we have 3 stereo mixes in this session, and I'm using Pro Tools as a mastering tool right now instead of a mixing tool.
Okay.
So each one of these mixes are in here because I can quickly click on either one of the mixes and hit play and listen to it
Or should I take
and compare tones and go into our mix window and make adjustments that way.
Got it. Now, how did you actually get the mixes into this session?
What I did when we were finished mixing Shake It, the last song we were working on, I went to our bounce to disc option here and basically bounced the entire song onto the hard drive, sort of like you would bounce a stereo mix to, let's say, a DAT player or a half-inch deck. So once we were done there, I imported the songs into Pro Tools, and then let me show you what we're doing here in the mix window. These stereo mixes are going into our auxiliary tracks. I was using these because we can insert stereo versions of the plugins on each of these tracks to do left and right adjustments simultaneously.
Oh, okay.
It's a really nice thing about the plugins is that most of them come in mono and stereo versions. So we have a stereo D2 EQ here. This is a really great mastering EQ. And we also have a plugin by DigiDesign called Maxim. Great mastering tool for compression.
Got it. Now, once you do all this, how do you actually get it onto the CD blank?
What we can do at this point is we can go to Master List and import the songs into Master List. I've got one more to import here, so I'll do that. We'll grab Hey Fell. And let's say I wanted Hey Fell to be the second song and Easy to be the third song. We could just rearrange those. So now Shake It, Hey Fell, Easy. That's the order that it'll come up on our CD.
Okay.
These are the index numbers. So when you hit 2 on your CD player, it's going to play Hey Fell. We could adjust the times in between the tunes. And if the levels aren't all even yet, we could even do level tweaking here in Master List. At this point, we could hit the burn the CD button. And once I hit right disc here and push the CD into the CD burner, we'll be burning a CD.
Wow, it's so easy.
Yep.
Well, there you have it. We've been sitting in front of Pro Tools this entire time, and you've seen how we've recorded, edited, mixed, and even done all of our signal processing and mastering all in this one environment. The point is, Pro Tools really gives you the power to do all of these things and still focus on being creative. For more information on DigiDesign products or to schedule a Pro Tools demo, contact us at 1-800-333-2137, extension 806, or check us out at our website at www.digidesign.com.